Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Marianne, and I'm the general manager here at East City Bookshop, an independent, community-minded, and woman-owned bookstore. Who has been here before? Lots of people. Anyone here for the first time? Amazing. Welcome. Welcome back. Anyone joining us online, thank you for being here as well. Thank you for joining us to celebrate Ladies in Waiting, Jane Austen's Unsung Characters, a short story anthology featuring none other than local favorites Nikki Payne and Diana Quincy. If you're here tonight, you might enjoy some of our upcoming romance events or our romance book club. We have an event for Some Kind of Famous by Ava Wilder coming up on Thursday, a virtual event for Son of the Morning by Okweke Emezi virtually on Monday, November 17th. And we have an offsite event for the deluxe edition of Brimstone by Callie Hart on Tuesday, November 18th. You can find more information about our events and book clubs on our website. You can also catch more Nikki Payne just down the street at the Folger Shakespeare Library on Tuesday, December 9th for their birthday tribute to Emily Dickinson and Jane Austen. They've got quite a bit of Austen-centric programming coming up, so check out their website for more information on all of that. The Folger has also provided a drawing to win a 6 Ticks pack to their programming for this season tonight. So you can fill out a drawing slip at the info desk after the event, and we would love to have you enter that. Before I introduce our authors, some quick housekeeping notes. If you could take a moment to silence your cell phones, it would be much appreciated. If you need a restroom at any point, they are located upstairs past the cash register. More importantly, you can purchase Ladies in Waiting or any of Nikki or Diana's other books upstairs at the cash register. We've also got some Jane Austen paraphernalia up there and in our fiction section over to my left. And we'll have a discussion between Diana and Nikki, followed by a Q&A and a book signing. You can ask questions in person or on Zoom using the Q&A feature. Now, I'm excited to welcome Nikki Payne and Diana Quincy to discuss the short story anthology, Ladies in Waiting. Nikki Payne is the author of Pride and Protest and Sex, Lies, and Sensibility. By day, Nikki Payne is a curious tech anthropologist asking the right questions to deliver better digital services. By night, she dreams of ways to subvert canon literature. She's a member of Smut U, a premium feminist writing collective, and is a cat lady with no cats. Diana Quincy is the best-selling author of the Accidental Peers series. As a U.S. Foreign Service brat, Diana grew up all over the world, but is now happily settled in Virginia with her husband and 2 sons. When not bent over her laptop, Diana spends time with her family, reads, practices yoga, and plots her next travel adventure. Please join me in giving our authors a very warm welcome.
Hey everyone. This is fun.
So we don't have a narrator, so we're gonna wing it with you guys today.
It's gonna be very chill.
Hello.
Oh, can
I guess it's on.
we should get closer to the mic.
So you guys are obviously here for Ladies in Waiting. We're there with I don't know how many other authors. I guess we should know that, but with
Yeah.
several other authors. But what Nikki and I have in common is, does anybody know? Nikki?
I think we're the only non-white characters in the book.
That's right. So our characters are marginalized. We wrote marginalized characters. So we introduced that to the Jane Austen world. And why do you think that? What value does that bring, do you think?
I think one of the things that brings, as a person who actually loves introducing brown bodies into Jane Austen like infrastructure, is that I think it forces us to contend with what types of stories are universal stories and what types of stories are niche stories. I think we're told all the time that the types of things that are interesting to us are super niche, or that there's a section for that. There's a small book section that's African American interest, over there. But once you use that infrastructure that's already kind of in zeitgeist of thinking, right? Like everyone kind of knows the bones of certain types of things, and then you put this ostensibly Black story or Arab story onto that. It starts to feel like it does this humanizing work and this universalizing work to say anyone in this position, no matter what you look like, would behave in this way, right? And I just think it does. I think it does some cultural work as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal, right? They're just, you look in the world and the world is diverse. And, it's fun to bring that kind of diversity. And it's challenging because um, you want to give people what they expect in a romance or in a Jane Austen kind of retelling. And then you add a little wrinkle and you want to make sure that that wrinkle doesn't feel like you're teaching them something or you're shoving some idea down their throat, but that it's just an interesting, natural part of the story. So tell us, Nikki, tell us who you wrote about. I'm doing the questions out of order.
Yes,
Sorry.
no, that's fine. I wrote about Caroline Bingley because I was just talking that
Remind people who that is.
Caroline Bingley is the I don't want to call her an antagonist. She was just kind of like this. She's the woman who had the reservations. Oh, sorry. I just imagine everyone's in my head. I'm just like everyone obviously knows who Caroline. No, Pride and Prejudice. She is the sister of George Bingley, who's engaged ultimately to Jane. And she had her reservations about Elizabeth's entire family for good reason, because they were a little bit, right? And I wrote about Caroline Bingley for a variety of reasons. One, as I was talking to someone in there, I just love a bitch. You know what I mean? I just love like a just someone who's just a little problematic. And Caroline Bingley is one of those characters where I thought would be interesting to be inside of her head, right? To say like, okay, she's a bitch, but like let's cozy up, right? And let's see where this could be, right? And I reimagined her as a free woman of color who is traveling west. So she's had this humiliating thing happen. This man, Toussaint D'Arcy, who was her kind of promised thing, right? She was very good. She followed the rules. She was a very good woman in like this kind of very tight free people of color like culture in New Orleans. She did everything right. And then here comes this brown woman with unkempt hair, who walks around with these muddy shoes and gets the prize. She gets the ring.
Lizzie.
Oh, yes, Lizzie. Sorry. Sorry. I'm in my head like everyone knows what I'm talking about. And so I position her at this moment where she is flabbergasted. She is kind of on her ass a little bit, like, wait a minute, I did everything right. And so she has this moment where she's struggling with her own sense of like desirability. And there's this opportunity to get on a train, be the richest woman in the West. And for her, it's like, let me show these people that I'm not upset, that I'm still this woman. If I can't order this world, I'll order that world. And so she goes on this train with the express purpose to order her new world and become the queen of something. Okay. And things don't turn out the way that she thinks.
And just to say, I haven't read it yet either. I haven't read it yet, but the reviews very often point out her story as one of the best. So just FYI, she doesn't read reviews.
Yeah.
I read all the reviews.
Terrified. Yeah.
So I tried to think of immediately when my editor called and asked if I wanted to take part in this. Immediately I said, I want to do Lydia because she's so annoying, but she's so memorable, right? And she's a key player. And so then when I started getting into her head, I started thinking she was 15 and she got stuck with Wickham. And Darcy is made out to be a hero because he got Wickham to marry her. And if, from Lydia's point of view, Darcy did that so that Lizzie, oh, sorry. Oh, it's not me. Okay. So from Lydia's point of view, he did that so that Lizzie would be respectable for him to marry. So it was more of a selfish thing. So, so mine is less, Nikki created a whole new world. Mine is more like a sequel. And there are hints in the original text about what happens to Lydia after she marries Darcy. So, I mean, not Darcy, after she marries Wickham. So I sort of looked for all those clues and then I built the world out from there. And it's a pretty miserable world, but luckily he's dead when we start. So she's a happy widow, but it's been a miserable life and she's still very unrespectable in the society. And so what I introduced a marginalized character is she falls in love with the local vicar. And the local vicar is of Lebanese extraction. And part of why I wanted to do that is because there is a very big misconception that all Arabs are Muslims, and which couldn't be further than the truth. There's a healthy Christian population, especially in Lebanon, but also in Palestine, where the birthplace of Jesus. Of course, they're going to be. The very first Christians are there, and they're still. Well, it's not as healthy a community after what's happened the last few years because a lot of those churches have been bombed. Um, so I really wanted to. So maybe teach somebody something, but not in a preachy, teachy way. So that's what my and um, Darcy redeems himself in this one. So because I can't make him. I mean, I don't want everyone to come for me. I'm not an idiot. So, um, we're curious to know, like, we're gonna say what our favorite Jane Austen books are, and then we're gonna ask you guys, if you've seen the movies or if you've read the books, what your favorites are. So, Nikki, what's your favorite?
Um, I feel like Persuasion is a masterpiece. It's just I can't stop thinking about Anne Elliot and just her poise and her regret. I feel like regret is just such a grown ass feeling. Like when you're young, you're just like, no regrets. Ah, we go down like men, but like something about just being outside of the flower of youth and thinking back on your life in a way to say like, I really should have laughed more or taken that chance or gone on that date. It's just such an emotion to me that's rooted in wisdom, regret.
And
And I'm not anti, I feel
it's
like
universal, I
yeah,
think, feeling that to have regrets and
yeah,
to wish you had done something else.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I do feel like that comes on as you age, as you kind of look back, as opposed to when I'm young, I'm just like, fuck it, I live my life. But
And also, I think I mean, a book I plug, a book that came out September 30th, is my book, The Earl That Got Away, is a persuasion retelling.
yeah,
So persuasion is also my favorite. I love them all. But I think that regret is a big thing I think when you're young, and if that's your first love, you assume that we're all going to love that way again, that this is how
yeah,
love is.
yeah,
And you might not be smart enough
yeah.
or wise enough to know that this is something special and different, and you need to fight for it no matter what.
And you think there's still time, and you think you have all this time, and then suddenly you're just, you're looking up and you see like the angel Gabriel, and you're just like, I thought, you know, you know.
All right. So we're just curious, like, whose favorite Austen is Pride and Prejudice? Oh, wow.
Queens, classic, classic.
Sense and Sensibility? Oh, wow.
Okay,
All right. Persuasion?
Queens, Queens.
So what am I missing?
Emma.
Emma.
Okay, iconoclast. Okay,
Man.
Mansfield Park.
Yeah.
How dare you? Who? Who? I want to see any hands. I will find you.
So
No,
I feel like some people didn't raise their hands. Huh?
oh, Northanger Abbey.
Oh, Northanger Abbey.
Okay, first of all, you guys, sorry. Also, little secret plug. Now, so I just wrote Princess and the PI. That was out like September 16th. And my editor was like, no more Jane Austen. Don't be weird. And I'm like, no, I would never. I would never. But like if you read Princess and the PI and you notice that Maurice is obsessed with muslin, you know what I mean? Like then that's on you. That's your weird brain. That's nothing to do with me. So I love Northanger Abbey. And I just feel like honestly it's so funny. It's the funniest. It's like Jane Austen with her tongue just all the way in her cheek. Yes. I can't believe I forgot that. Yes. Mansfield Park is tough though. I can speak for
So
hundreds of years on Mansfield
what
Park.
was the majority? I was there a majority? I don't think there's a majority.
Persuasion?
Oh.
I'm just saying that because that was my favorite. Just like
But it's funny. It's like Pride and Prejudice is like the one that gets all the remakes and all the.
yeah.
I think it's just because of Darcy. I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
hero resonates.
Rich King. I think that resonates. That resonates.
So, what was your introduction? How did you first come across Jane Austen?
Oh gosh. You guys have probably heard this story 100 times, but let me take you back to 1995. Okay. 1995 was a good year. Year of our Lord, 1995. A lot of things were happening. I was a teen in the flower of my youth, and a lot of things were happening to like elder millennials. Like there was a lot of media out around that 1995, 1996 area that were all about classic retellings of like literature. So if you guys remember this pocket of time that Romeo and Juliet came out with Claire Danes, do you remember Um, 10 Things I Hate About You, She's the Man. Like these are all like they're the 1995 version of Pride and Prejudice, right?
Hmm.
Comes out. That one Sense and Sensibility.
When did Emma come out? Later.
Emma was a little late. It was like
There was
97.
an Emma then. Yeah,
But it's that pocket, right? Like
yeah,
that one sensibility with Emma Thompson when she has like the nervous breakdown in Shay's
right.
Lounge. Yeah, like there's this pocket of time, if you're impressionable and weird, okay, and living in this time period, like you are in this pocket. And I remember the holy grail of adaptations for me, Clueless. I was young. I watched Clueless. It shook my entire body and spirit. And then I found out it was an Emma retelling. And I was just like, I'm convinced I got to get in the white folks' business. Like immediately, it was an emergency. So I started reading Emma, and I never looked back. So like, congratulations for everyone for making it out of 1995 and 1996. Not weird, but I did not. I'm still weird. I love it. My introduction is I always go back to these stories.
My introduction is I don't remember. I really don't remember. I don't remember. I think Emma was the first one I read. And I think it was a high school English assignment. And I think I went from there.
Did
I
you like
can't-
resent it? Were you just like, oh, look at this? This is weird.
No, no, because I knew she was classic and that we should be reading her. But she didn't have the kind of impact on me that, Wuthering Heights had on me. So sorry.
If you're a teenager, Wuthering Heights just really moved through your body, didn't it? Like it was just really, it really shook you. I remember reading Wuthering Heights and I was just like, anything for you, Heathcliff. And also the same with Jane
But
Eyre.
I thought he was terrible too.
No, he was terrible.
Yeah.
So is Mr. Rochester. He's absolute terrible
Yeah.
person.
I
But
like
as a
that
teenager,
story too.
it hits you differently. I think it hits you differently as a teenager. It somehow feels peak like desperately romantic,
Yeah.
right? I can't put my finger on it.
That he ruins himself. He's
Yeah.
basically ruined because of her.
Yeah.
I mean, not because of her. It's not her fault.
Yeah.
It's his fault.
Yeah.
So, right.
That's it. That's it.
So I'm gonna hit Nikki with something
Yeah.
that just came up to me.
Okay.
But Nikki is an anthropologist by trade. She has a PhD. She's so smart. She's smarter than all of us.
Not true.
But I'm curious, like if you've looked at the Jane Austen's world
Yeah.
from a cultural anthropologist view, and if you can, and I'm guessing you have since
Yeah.
you. So can you give us some insights that you took from that?
Okay, you guys, buckle up. She's giving me the authority to be weird. Okay. She asked, remember, okay, one of the things that I love about like thinking about Jane Austen in her world, if you open up any Jane Austen book, the first 3 pages, Jane Austen is consistently and constantly ordering the world. She is telling you who's got the bag. You will know in the first 3 pages who has all the power, who has all the money, who like where people belong in society. And like one of the things that Jane Austen does so well is socially situate people. And it was either part of what it meant to be a genteel lady at the time. You have to know where people stand in society and how to interact and engage with them as a result of that, right? If someone was kind of falling out of favor, these are types of things you have to know. You don't want to be caught, with someone who had a scandal attached to them, right? So like there are all of these ways that you can see at the very beginning of every Jane Austen novel that she's mapping out power, she's mapping out money, she's mapping out social connections, because those are the things that you need to know that situate you into that world and give you tons of context and to as to why those characters are acting and behaving the way that they are. And so if I was going to like if Jane Austen walked in right now, with her like little bonnet and her like blue dress, she would like look at us. She like brokey, nice, wealthy. Not, like she would have this ability to read the room and read power, like pretty immediately. And I think that's part of one of the gifts that Jane Austen was gifted with, being a woman of her time and being just the under the like kind of financial notice of gentility, right? So she was right underneath the class in which she wrote. So she had this POV that she knew who was important and also knew that it was silly why they were important, right? So she had this really interesting POV. I'll stop because I can go on forever, but I'll stop.
So, she was one of the first to do world building.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, at least she does it in the first 3 pages pretty quickly.
She certainly does.
So, I do play with class and power in Lydia's story, very original title. That was the working title. And then I said to my editor, no, I need to change the title. She goes, no, I like that title. So working title became the title. But I do play with, because she is a widow of a bad man who was a gambler, a boozer, all the bad things, philanderer, and they owe people money. So she is, even though she came from a genteel family, she's in the bottom. And this was in the original text. Lizzie and Darcy are supposed to be our heroes, but in the original text, they don't entertain Lydia at what's the name
Pemberley.
at
Pemberley.
Pemberley. I should know that. They don't entertain her there because she's not of good, because her reputation is bad. So that is part of the story. And so part of the way she can find her happily ever after is, unfortunately, they leverage their power and their position in society to elevate her so she can have her HEA, which is how Darcy redeems himself. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's all the questions I had.
I have a couple of questions for the audience, if you guys don't mind. So I found this really interesting to think about characters and what was interesting and like why we chose certain characters. And I'm wondering, so everyone kind of raised their hand for some specific reason about what their favorite Jane Austen book was. But I'm very interested to hear from you all about like characters that stuck with you. Like if your favorite book is Persuasion, which it should be. And like what about that character moved you? And if you were to rewrite this story, like would you change anything? Like I'll start off because I personally I have a lot of feelings about Mansfield Park. I have a lot of feelings about Fanny. And but I also think if I were given the chance, she would be like one of the first characters. If we were doing main character switch ups, she would be one of the first characters that I would just love to be inside of her head. Um, and I think about that a lot. So do you guys have like these characters that kind of call to you in these books, or some characters that you actually like cannot stand, or and why?
Hmm.
Yes.
Of Anne's friend, the happy widow.
Oh,
I mean, she's poor and she's sick. And I know by the end, like Mrs. Smith, yes. Captain Wentworth helps her get some money back and stuff, but she's just such a fascinating character, and I love her so much, and I just want her to be happy and healthy. If I could rewrite it, I'd be all like, oh, she gets a cure. And then
Yeah.
yeah. And didn't she have like the really important information about, yeah, like she was the key. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is another thing, right? About how information travels in these Jane Austen novels, how people get data, like so much of persuasion.
And
in particular-
misinformation.
Yeah. So much of persuasion in particular is just overhearing shit. Do you guys notice that like everyone's like at Everyone's at the door. Do you know what I mean? And they overhear things, or someone will say something. And so there's so much, even in Sense and Sensibility, there's so much gossip. And gossip has so much currency in Jane Austen's world. It can ruin you, but it can also suddenly become your saving grace. That type of gossip that can end up saving marriages, saving relationships. I love that. Mrs. Smith is a happy widow. She needs a cure.
Were there other secondary characters that you would have liked to have seen written about?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I think
Oh, okay.
Austen, as she wrote more, started also being attracted to to her own Mean Girls. I see Mansfield Park, which was written was the book she wrote before Emma. Like Mary Crawford is a lot more developed as a character, and I think with Emma, she kind of wanted. To me, one of my favorite things is to look at Emma from the perspective that she's the Austen Mean Girl, and there was a flip situation. Jane Fairfax has her own whole secret romance going on the entire time beneath the storm. Chill. That Emma is just oblivious to because she can be a bit self-centered.
Right. And thinks she knows it all and is superior. Yeah. So you were going to say hot takes.
Okay, no, that's blowing my mind. I love that. And a little bit of interesting tea is that she wrote Mansfield Park, and it was kind of like lackluster response. Her mother was even just like, I can't stand this bitch Fanny, and like literally like wrote her and tell her just like I can't get with her. And so I'm just assuming that she's like she got this feedback from Fanny, who she liked fine enough. She like defended Fanny a lot. And then she ended up writing Emma, which I do think is an independent, almost corrected Fanny, only because like Fanny didn't
That's interesting.
like this is a theory, right? Only because she she was really voracious and like asking about feedback. She had a lot of feedback from Fanny. Her brother liked Fanny, but her brother was a dummy. So she was just like, this is data that you liked Fanny, and then her next book, I think, is just like this iteration of this, particular woman she was trying to create. And it's very interesting when you think about Jane Fairfax, like all of these women who like she was trying to like think through and think about and create these independent women or happy women. And I think she was iterating on these on happiness as a woman, and in all these ways you could find it. Yeah.
So I think we're supposed to go to questions at
we have another
7:30.
question. Yes.
So
But I
audience
do have a hot
questions.
take.
Okay, give us a hot take.
A Jane Austen hot take.
Yes.
Mr. Bennet is the villain of Pride and Prejudice. He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy.
A negligent father.
Negligent father. He makes fun of his wife constantly, makes fun of his daughters, the dumb ones, right? And he's bad with money.
Right.
And he was just and the whole like honestly, the whole book, he was in his study. And Jane Austen would tell you if he was like in his study, like fucking studying, but he wasn't. He was just in his study,
hiding out,
the way that like
not
my husband is in
taking
the bathroom.
responsibility.
Like he's just like watching YouTube clips. Like I swear he's not working. He's just in the study. And I just feel like he was just hiding out from family life. Like he had all these daughters. He's overwhelmed by the estate. And he's also had this deep feud with his brother, who he just can't stand. And he knows his brother's son is going to inherit this. And he's just kind of like retreated. And he's just like, let me just let them handle it. And like, thank God his daughters were hot, right? Because otherwise, they just would have. Anyway,
And his wife, as silly as she was out there trying to get them married off.
she was hustling.
Yeah.
She was hustling. She was getting on everybody's nerves, but she was the one who recognized the dire straits that they were
Right.
actually in.
Right. And he didn't really have any plan for that.
He had zero even when they okay, so sorry, but when they come back and they're just like, oh, Lydia's been paid for, and they paid this money, and she's saved, and he was like, well, how much did he get for her? Because he'd be a fool to take any less than 10 pounds or something. And I'm just like, dude, this is your she's lost.
Yeah, he was nasty piece of
Yeah,
work. He was.
it was crazy work. But the whole time it was just this weird business transaction. Like suddenly he knows about business. Anyway. Anyway, Mr. Bennett is not it. That's my hot take.
All right. Any questions?
I have a question from online.
Okay.
Do you think Austen was a feminist? Are some characters more overtly feminist political than others?
Do I need to repeat that?
Yeah.
So the question from an online participant is, was Jane Austen a feminist? What was the rest of that question?
Do you think Austen was a feminist? And are some characters more overtly feminist or political than others?
And are some characters more overtly feminist or political than others? I mean, I think she was a feminist in that all of her main characters are pretty smart women who understand that they don't have much, that in society they don't have much leverage, and they understand what their leverage is, and and that power for them in their society is to marry well. Um, I don't know if some were more overtly feminist than others. They're kind of all of her heroines were kind of strong.
Yeah. I think even outside of the heroines, if we take Pride and Prejudice as an example, she introduces you to Colin, right? Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is not a woman, right? But you also know from the way that she writes this that he's an idiot, right? And you know that even if you don't take anything away from Pride and Prejudice, even if you hated the book, you know that Mr. Collins did not deserve to inherit the house, right? Like you somehow suss out that he was unworthy of inheriting that, and it was unfair that women could not inherit the estate, right? And so like there's this sense of like through like poking fun at these male characters who are supposed to be at the elite, which she does. She makes fun of her male characters like hilariously. You understand, if you don't understand anything else, that Mr. Collins was not qualified to inherit and that the women should have been able to. That's a quite a radical POV for the time period.
And also, what was his wife, Charlotte? Yeah. And Charlotte doesn't love him. She kind of knows he's a loser, but she also knows that for her to have any kind of life or any kind of status in society, that she should marry him. And she does marry him. So and I think that is a feminist, really, perspective, even though I think Jane Austen would not have thought of herself as a feminist necessarily. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm interested about like what you think is so compelling about Austen's side characters. Like there's been a few books that I've read recently that are kind of reimaginings or retellings of Austen's side characters. But this one obviously there's I think it's called The Unlikely Pursuit of Mary Bennet, which is like a sapphic book with Mary Bennet and Charlotte Lucas. And there's Longbourn by Joe Baker, which is about the servants at Netherfield. And like, so yeah, just interested to hear your thoughts about like, what is it about Austen's side characters that make for such kind of compelling material for these reimaginings?
So the question is, what is it about Jane Austen's side characters that make them so compelling and that spark all these other novels and books featuring side characters and even the servants? I mean, I think it's a testament to Jane Austen. I think it's the world she creates. I think people are so entranced, and it's such a part of the culture that it's not really necessarily the secondary characters, but it's a way to get more story, more Jane Austen story, and to do it using characters we already know and love in a world that we know and love. I mean, I think that would be my take.
I agree with that. And I also think that like we've all been enmeshed in like a literary world and had these instances where we wanted to like crack open a different door. I'm saying this as like a student of and even secondary writer of like fan fiction, right? Where you know there's a world and for example, not that I write any, but like let's say for example, super hot Star Trek fan fiction. Right? And where you're reimagining that Beverly Crusher and Captain Picard actually, got together. Like you want to create like this new space for these characters to live this kind of interesting and different life. I mean, James won like a Pulitzer, but and it's essentially fan fiction of Huckleberry Finn, where the side character's perspective gives new meaning, new depth, new richness to the novel. So it's almost like you're retelling the story, right? But it's in this kind of Rosh Hashanah. What is it? I'm gonna Rosh. What is it? Rashomon. Okay. Come on, sis. Come on, sis. Okay, right. It's this like multi-leveled story. Like you're still loving the story. You're still like really interested in that. But like sometimes certain characters, the 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 maidservant, the enslaved man, right? They turn that story into something totally different. The overlooked sister, the annoying sister. The same story becomes something so different from a different perspective. And I just think it's a cracked door into the world.
I think it's so interesting because I think it is fan fiction, right? I mean, we're all basically just writing fan fiction. And also, from a business perspective, publishers love it. And so it's going to make them money, they think. It's instantly, you don't have to explain the world to anybody. Everybody instantly knows. We were just at a conference in LA, Steamy Lit, over the weekend. And, instantly people are like, oh, that's so interesting. You don't have to sell it. So I think that's, the business part of it is, I mean, for us, an editor conceived of it. She came to us. She asked us what side characters we want to write. And she really gave us really free reign. It could be as long as we wanted it to be. It could be any character we wanted. A couple of people did the same character. So I think, there was a money. It's not necessarily the secondary characters. It's a world that readers love and has stood the test of time, and there's money to be made, hopefully.
That's not very romantic, Diana.
I know. Right.
Yes.
I know, Nikki, your books are modern adaptations, and I'm sorry, Dan, I'm not sure about yours, but when adapting Jane Austen, do you think it's a challenge to take so not because not only are there historical things that just don't apply right now, but there's also British things that just don't apply in the US, right? Like, I mean, realistically, like there are still like class differences in the UK that are totally different than the class differences here. So
Well, not that different.
Sorry.
No, I know. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
Less obvious, maybe we'll say. And so I'm just curious if that's something you consider when writing, like those two things, or do you just kind of be like, just focus on the plot? Like, how do you handle that?
Repeat the question first.
The question is that there are a lot of things about Jane Austen's world, like class differences and, time differences that don't really translate well to sometimes American context or modern context. How do you decide essentially kind of um like how to use that and how to translate those complex things? And I mean you certainly make a good point about class seemingly not standing on its own as a reason to not kind of date someone in the United States. And so one of the things that I do typically in my novels and love to do in general is like play with race, right? And so like engage those uncomfortable spaces where someone can have to ask a difficult, complex question or feel like they are not the person for this person, right? So I think sometimes in America, race can do some really interesting class work because there are a lot of class assumptions also associated with race. So there are these kind of breakdowns that people can play with, assumptions that people can play with that fit very neatly into the class structure in England. In fact, in Pride and Protest, it's a black woman and an Asian male, and they are in different classes, but the race aspects adds this level of complexity to their engagement that still continues to make you wonder, like, can they make it? And so like I like to trouble those things with class. I also like to think about analogous instances, like when we think about reputation, right? You just like, okay, so a woman someone whispered about her, That's not going to mean anything in the big 2025, right? And so in Sex, Lies, and Sensibility, one of the things that I had um, work as a mode of reputation is the internet. And like, what happens if you had a, pretty bad video out and everyone knows you by, the shape of your behind, you know what I mean? And, and it becomes this way in which this character's reputation is ruined. And it also makes you tease out these questions to say like, are we so far removed from Regency England that your reputation can be tarnished this way and you could still, find a suitable mate? One of the questions that Nora asked herself as a woman who had a viral, sex video is like, who's going to actually love me and want me for who I am and not this viral video, right? So those things to me can work in analogous ways, you know?
Nobody asked me, but I'll answer too. So my persuasion retelling is Victorian England, but I think when Nikki mentioned race, it's not always the white people rejecting the brown people or the black people. Um, Definitely in Arab culture, Arab American culture, you're not supposed to marry out of your culture. I mean, and certainly not out of your religion. So part of the reason it didn't, they break up in the beginning is because her family does not accept him because he is not of her culture. I don't really address their religion, although most of the Arabs in America in Victorian times were actually Christians. So that what the religion wasn't the problem. The problem was that he was not Arab, but also he was a nobody. He didn't have money, he didn't have class, he didn't have status. So in that way, it's not unlike the way the English saw it. So I think playing with it's not always the white people rejecting the brown and black people. So it's interesting to sort of look at that also.
Any other questions? I'm gonna ask, for your question background, were there other side characters you considered, or did you immediately know Caroline?
I mean, I immediately said Lydia, but I thought I would get big-footed by one of the bigger authors. And I'm like, and she's like, okay. And I'm like, well, do we want to check with everybody else? Because, I wasn't, one of the marquee names. But she was like, no, So, I mean, to me, she's such a memorable character. And I just thought it would be easy to tell her story and interesting to tell her story to see what happened to her. And I liked that the original text gave you enough clues that I could set her on her way and build her world.
This is such a weird and deep cut, but I really wanted to um think through the Musgrove sisters, like the woman, is it Mary? I can't believe I'm forgetting her name, Mary. Um, I wanted to think about that moment where she jumped. Like I wanted to be in her head where she was like kind of going after Wentworth and is thinking like I got to give this my all.
Louisa. Was it
Louisa
Louisa?
Musgrove. Goodness gracious. Like I wanted her to I wanted to be in her head to be like this person who's like constantly testing whether people like really want her or really love her. And like for her to go through her life giving people these purity tests. And like I don't know if it would have been a romance, but I'm very interested in that type of I mean, eventually she ends up getting married to like the sad poet, right? But I just love the idea of her um like testing how strong your attachment is to her by what you can handle that she throws at you, you know? And I just like that type of character. And I just feel like they could be a little messy to get into that person's head.
Would have been fun.
It would have been fun. Little Louisa Musgrove chaos, you know?
Go ahead.
Think about the historical that like we also see just this love of Jane Austen and like I don't know what is it. I mean, I read historical, so I mean, how do you pitch people if you love Jane Austen and here's why you read historical? You know, I'm not articulating well, but it just strikes me that we're talking about Jane Austen. Yeah, historical romance feels like it's on its.
So the question is, Jane Austen is so popular, but historical romance is in the pits, or what's the word? I mean, it is struggling. I mean, I don't have one coming up. I think I've written 14. But my next one is a thriller, a modern day thriller, still with Arab American characters. And that's just because there's just not that much. Honestly, I didn't pitch to my publisher because my editor left. And once the person who acquires you leaves and you get adopted by someone else, I mean, she was a completely competent editor, but I was not a passion project for her. I mean, she was great. Don't get me wrong, but she wasn't it wasn't I was not a passion project for her. And so I didn't pitch, and I had this idea that I had been wanting to write this thriller for a while. So I did that, and it sold, and it's a Mindy book club pick. Plug, plug, plug. So, and it'll be out April 7th, more plugs. So, but I think the reason, oh, let's get back to the topic, the question. But look, why didn't, we all thought Bridgerton was going to resurrect. I mean, Bridgerton is basically historic. It is from historical romance novels. And I think it's from what the booksellers and what you guys tell us, it's because the small mass markets that people under 30 think those are for old people. And I don't get it. Do you have that much money to buy expensive books? I mean, I used to love the small ones, and maybe that's because I'm old. I'm over 30. I know it's hard to believe I'm over 30. But so I think that's part of it. I think the industry didn't keep up. They didn't know how to innovate. And honestly, just in my observation, they got rid of the people. They, bought them out. They, forced them into retirement. The people who could have, um, who had ideas about how to keep the genre going, how to resurrect the genre. And it looks to me, just based on my experience, that the editors who are in charge now are just going to wait to see who can resurrect historical romance. They're not looking for the way to resurrect it. And it's not just the mass market size, which I don't understand, but okay. I mean, if you're a voracious reader, I don't know. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of money on books. Um, I think they didn't modernize the covers. I know lots of us love clinch covers. I always said, nobody listens to me, but I always thought that historical romance covers should be like a cross between the traditional historical romance and like historical fiction. That something that they should have come up with something in the middle. Um, Now, I mean, there's sort of, I don't know how many of you have read Joanna Shup's latest book, um, The Gilded Heiress. Now, that is a romance. They just gave it a different kind of cover, but that Joanna pushed for. It really didn't come from the publisher. She pushed for something different, and they put it in trade. So we'll see what that experiment looks like. I think those are the reasons, though. I think a lack of imagination on the people who used to be the leading people in historical romance.
I absolutely agree with that, and also to double down on the what I also felt like was a lack of imagination. I feel like there was a class issue in Regency. I love a Regency. But can't everybody be a Duke? You know what I mean? How many Dukes are there, right? Maybe someone's an Earl, maybe someone's a Viscount. Rarely, you can get a merchant or something, but everyone was a Duke. And there was this, and like the way that people were wanting to tell these stories, and even there's real data, right? They're just like, if there's not a Duke on the title, then they like won't sell.
Walmart, if you have Duke in your title, Walmart is going to take you
Yeah,
usually.
yeah,
And
right.
you want to get on the shelves. You want to get on. I mean, every series I did had a Duke in it because you want to get on and it's usually the first book because to get people hooked. And you do it because Walmart wants it.
Yeah.
And Walmart is the place to be if you want to sell these books.
But I have read just some out of this world historicals with the Victorian underbelly. Just like give me Scarlet Peckham, right? Like when I think about even Diana Quincy, like you are
Please go ahead. For complimenting me, go ahead.
absolutely like merchants, right? Like
Working class people.
working class people. I currently read the hell out of working class people in Regency era, in Victorian era. They still have incredibly romantic stories. I think we got a little too wrapped up in telling aristocratic stories.
And I think the editors who were acquiring got less daring and it became a very closed. If it wasn't England based, they weren't interested.
That's another thing. Like, wait a minute. You mean other places have history? Like, when I tell you the way I would just eat up like a Chinese historical, right? Korean historical, African historical. I mean, those all like South American eras. I mean, come. Okay, anyway, all of this to say yes, right? Like it got not only super class focused, but focused on a very small area in the world when it just could have been so large.
Duke's ballrooms or country estates
Yeah,
was basically.
Duke's, ballrooms, country estates. You're exactly right.
So I think that's what killed the genre, lack of imagination.
Yeah. No,
I mean, I hope it's not dead, but
I
you know.
watch Korean historicals all the time for free. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Somebody else had one more question. One more question. Go ahead.
Either of you have a personal favorite Jane Austen fan fiction, whether it's retelling, reimagining, old, modern era?
You mean besides Nikki's retellings?
Oh, I wasn't raising my hand to anything. I was raising my hand because I have my my yeah, I have some L3 links obviously. But also like I have this thing where it's just like if you said it was even vaguely Jane Austen, sorry, I read it. Sorry, I watched it. Do you know what I mean? I consume all the media. And all of this to say I feel like Aisha at Last was one of the best Pride and Prejudice retellings.
Aisha at Last.
Aisha at Last. God. I mean, I read that and I must have read that maybe 4 or 5 times. And I just mustered up all my courage to DM her and say, I think we're together now. Like I don't make the rules, but I just anyway, all this to say, Aisha at Last is one of the best Pride and Prejudice retellings I've ever read. I'm still like 10 toes down. I've written a Pride and Prejudice retelling and it's still Aisha at Last. Do you know what I mean? Um, definitely for Pride and Prejudice, that one. And yeah.
I'm sorry, I forget all. I read a lot and I forget a lot. But I really did enjoy Longbourn, which is about the servants. That famous scene where